Welcome to a Legendarium special about what people ate at the first Thanksgiving. In this installment, we will talk about how the Thanksgiving celebration of 1621 came to be and what the Pilgrims and Wampanoag had to eat. For many Americans, the Thanksgiving meal includes seasonal dishes like roast turkey with stuffing, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie. The holiday feast dates back to November 1621, when the newly arrived Pilgrims and the Wampanoag gathered at Plymouth for an autumn harvest celebration. This event is regarded as America's first Thanksgiving, though Florida, Texas, Maine, and Virginia each declare itself the site of America's first Thanksgiving, held by either Spanish or English settlers. Yet the Thanksgiving held in 1621 is the event that informs the holiday as we practice it today. But what did the Pilgrims and Wampanoag have to eat, and how did the feast come to be? Of course, when the Pilgrims first arrived on the coast of modern-day Massachusetts in 1620, they didn't have an easy time of it. Early on, they entered seemingly abandoned villages, robbed stores of grain, and even stole from graves to provide for themselves. That made further poking around dangerous. Far worse, a severe winter caused an epidemic disease that swept through the Pilgrim camp. Of the 103 in the settlement, almost half of them died, including 78% of the women. Most of the survivors would have been young men and even teenagers. In March 1621, they came into contact with Chief Massasoit of the Wampanoag Nation, which migrated north for the summer planting. During that time, he made diplomatic rounds with other indigenous nations and found the newcomers on the coast of modern-day Plymouth. The two sides became allies, with Chief Wampanoag and his men providing instruction on how to farm New England soil better. His advice included burying fish in the furrows of cultivated earth as natural fertilizer. Why did the indigenous Americans prove so hospitable? Chief Massasoit of the Wampanoag saw the English colonists as potential allies in his struggle against rival chiefs. With his aid and comfort, the surviving Pilgrims planted a successful harvest during that springtime. After completing the year's work, the Pilgrims planned on holding a series of church services in Thanksgiving for the completion of their harvest, accompanied with much prayer and fasting. Good events such as a successful harvest or the ending of a war often inspired Thanksgiving proclamations among European Protestants, such as the Pilgrims. Instead, during November 1621, Chief Massasoit showed up with about 90 men in his company, probably a show of strength to his new allies. He was more interested in a lively celebration with feasting, sports, hunting, and even military exercises. Native American culture also emphasized Thanksgiving. Thanks would be given after minor successes like a good fishing trip or major events such as the birth of a healthy son. Of course, since Massasoit and his entourage outnumbered the Pilgrims by 2-1, the Pilgrims unsurprisingly decided that his idea for a Thanksgiving was better. Their harvest festival took place over 3 days between late September and mid-November during the year 1621. Above all, it celebrated the success of the harvest, which meant an end to the backbreaking toil of summer and assured their survival through the winter. The tiny colony's governor, William Bradford, sent 4 men on a fowling mission in preparation for the 3-day event. A colonist wrote, "Our harvest being gotten in, our governor sent 4 men on fowling, that so we might after a special manner rejoice together after we had gathered the fruits of our labors. They 4 in one day killed as much fowl as with a little help beside served the company almost a week." In those days, wild turkey were plentiful in the region and would be a common food source for both European settlers and indigenous Americans. Of course, the party may have also returned with other birds that often became unwilling guests on dinner tables like ducks, geese, and swans. Instead of the bread-based stuffing we use today, the Pilgrims flavored them with herbs, onions, and nuts. Another pilgrim named Winslow wrote that the Wampanoag guests arrived with an offering of 5 deer. The revelers likely roasted these deer on a spit over a smoldering fire and used some of the venison to make hearty stews. Local vegetables also appeared on the table, including onions, beans, cabbage, carrots, and perhaps peas. Corn, plentiful after that first harvest, would have been removed from the cob and turned into cornmeal. Pilgrims boiled and pounded the corn into a thick porridge that they sweetened with molasses, if they had it available. Fruits native to the region included blueberries, plums, grapes, and raspberries. Most famously, the Pilgrims ate cranberries, which Native Americans not only ate but used as a natural dye. Historians believe that the bulk of the Thanksgiving meal consisted of seafood, often absent from today's menus. Mussels, in particular, were abundant in New England at the time and could be easily harvested because they clung to the rocks along the shoreline. The colonists occasionally served mussels with curds, a dairy product similar to cottage cheese. Lobster, bass, clams, and oysters likely made up part of the feast. A colonist named Edward Winslow described the bounty of seafood near Plymouth as such. Our bay is full of lobsters all the summer and affordeth variety of other fish. In September, we can take a hogshead of eels in a night with a small labor, and can dig them out of their beds all the winter. We have mussels at our doors. Oysters we have none near, but we can have them brought by the Indians when we will. Of course, no Thanksgiving is complete without pumpkin pie, or at least pumpkins. Both the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag ate pumpkins and other squashes, but the fledgling colony lacked the butter and wheat flour necessary to make crust. Moreover, settlers hadn't even constructed an oven for baking. According to some accounts, early English settlers in North America improvised by hollowing out pumpkins, filling the shells with milk and honey to make custard, then roasting the gourds whole in hot ashes before eating them. That wraps things up for this episode of the Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.